These are the major concepts that in the Drawabox course we try and tackle. So some of these we dwell on near the beginning, like these first two. They relate very heavily to mark making. And others are covered through the entire length of the course and are topics that we really just hammer over and over again right up until the end. So to start with, confidence is about the ability to not let your brain just steer your line as you draw. So people have a tendency to want to be able to watch the tip of their pen as it glides across the page so that they can make sure that they are keeping their line as straight as possible. And in doing so, they have these little course corrections that manifest as a wobbly line because their brain is seeing, oh, the line's gone a little bit off track. And so we need to bring it right back in. Oh, no, we've gone off track in the opposite direction, and back and forth and so on. What we need to be able to do is as soon as that pen touches the page and we take off, we need to have the confidence to just maintain the trajectory that it's set out upon. Don't be afraid of an inaccurate line. We'll work on the ability to draw more accurate lines as we go, but first and foremost, our priority is always to draw smooth lines that maintain a consistent trajectory. And that is a matter of confidence. It's a matter of drawing without hesitation and without fear, and understanding how your body actually moves. Like how your arm, your pen basically, can be pivoted from multiple pivots along the arm. So you've got your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder, and all of these can yield different kinds of results. So the second one is control. It's the idea that every single line has a job, and you need to know what you need from that line before you actually go and draw it. People will often just try and think on the page, meaning they're putting lines down, just, trying to rough something out and getting their head around what's going on, but directly on the page. That doesn't work so well because you end up with a huge mess of lines. It's a waste. And once you've got that mess there, yes, a lot of people will, teach that once you've got the lines there, you just pick out the correct one. We're drawing with ink. We're drawing with nice, rich, fine liners that don't forgive that kind of behavior because we want to learn to think ahead of time. We want to prepare and, plan to get, this is the line that we want, and now we need to put ourselves in as advantageous a position, rotating the page as necessary, and going over the motion to draw it several times to get the feel for it, so that we can position ourselves as advantageously as possible to get that line down accurately and properly while still maintaining confidence above all else, keeping that line smooth and not slowing down as we draw to steer it. Third is patience. Patience and discipline really go hand in hand because students have a tendency to, we live in a world with lots of immediate, instant gratification. We want a website, that website loads in a second, or maybe, 3 seconds if it's the Drawabox website. But it's this idea that we're constantly bombarded with exactly what we want when we want it, and if we don't get it in seconds, we are upset and we are frustrated. And unfortunately, skills don't come immediately. You have to sit there and really work at something, and even with a lot of these exercises, like the first bunch, are things that once you understand the theory behind them, the explanation, the idea of, drawing from your wrist rather than drawing from your shoulder to achieve smoother lines, these are things that will help immediately improve your work. And so when you're used to that, if you don't have work that is at least satisfactory to you at the end, you get really frustrated and angry, and you feel like you are not keeping up with everyone else. Even though everyone else is having the exact same problem, you're working in a bubble where you can't see that. And so this is the idea that you need to accept that learning takes time, and that not every exercise that you come across will be there to just hold your hand little bit by bit. Okay, now we're gonna take the next step, and okay, you're confident, you're still feeling good about what you're doing. Okay, now let's take another step. It doesn't work that way, at least not in my classroom, because there are exercises here where you are designed to fall flat on your face. I'll say it frankly right now. The rotated boxes and the organic perspective boxes at the end of lesson 1, it's like throwing you into the deep end of a pool and watching you drown. Because drowning teaches you a lot about swimming, assuming you survive. The idea here is that we're introducing you to a concept that is so far beyond you right now that you're not going to manage. You might manage okay, but most people, they just flounder. And you know what? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's entirely expected. And so with those exercises, I tell them, do it once and then move on. Do it once to the best of your ability, meaning be patient, read through the instructions, apply them as well as you can, and don't rush, because this kind of frustrating frequently causes people to rush. Just do it once and move on. There will be people who don't listen. They just repeat it over and over and over until they feel good about themselves, whereas the next person has continued on to the more targeted exercises that are meant to, push you forwards in terms of those particular skills and actually get way better, way faster, whereas this person has been sitting just focusing on their egotistical need for every exercise to be good before they move on. Now, I could rant about this for days, and there's going to be another video about this, so I'll move on for now. The fourth concept is spatial reasoning. Spatial reasoning is the idea, it's basically just understanding how different forms sit in space relative to one another. And so you might have a box, and it's understanding how this box sits relative to maybe a sphere over here. Oh, that one came out like crap. Anyway, whatever. And the idea that, maybe they relate to one another such that the sphere is actually, the box is intersecting with the sphere over here. This is actually quite poorly done, but whatever. It's understanding how the lines that we're drawing create these solid three-dimensional forms, and that these forms can fit together in such a way or interact with one another with an understanding that it is, in fact, all 3D. We're not just drawing lines on a page, we're creating something believable in the world. And while I'm kind of glazing over this in the interest of time now, this is actually the very backbone of this course. The later lessons, we talk, lesson 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they all delve into the idea of spatial reasoning and building your spatial reasoning by drawing different kinds of things. So like insects, plants, animals, vehicles. And so each one is not about drawing that subject matter. It's about this thing that looks really complicated. It's just forms relating to one another. And that actually is part of the fifth point, construction. And that's the idea that if you look at any complicated object, it is just a collection of basic forms. A simple form can be drawn in such a way that it feels solid. And it's the easiest thing to draw while maintaining the illusion that it is in fact three-dimensional and not just lines on a page. Because all of this is just trickery. It's all illusions. We're lying to the viewer to convince them of something that isn't true. And we can do that most easily with these simple forms. But if you're looking at a more complicated form, like a dog, well, where are all how do we make that appear to be solid? We do that by breaking it down into simple forms and reconstructing it that way. Lastly is visual communication. This is the idea that our goal is not to reproduce images that we may be drawing from. There's lots of drawing from reference and observational drawing in our lesson, but whereas other courses may really focus on, like, say you've got a portrait of a person, you got to match that perfectly, or you've got a picture of, again, a dog, and you got to capture that dog just so. That's not what we're doing here. Because our focus is on looking at that photograph or looking at something that we see in real life and understanding it as being a collection of data. It's just information. There are all kinds of properties in this dog. It's furry. It's got long fur. It's soft fur. It's got a kind of a boxy head, and it's so tall and so wide, and it's got a long tail, and it's a very muscular form and muscular body rather. We're just trying to communicate what this dog is as though we can see it and the viewer of our drawing can't see it. We're just trying to communicate that information, just get it across to them as succinctly as possible. And that means we're not necessarily getting lost in the weeds of all this detail. We want to focus on the big, major things. First, constructing its body so that we know exactly what, how it exists in space. So the person looking at it can imagine what would it be like to interact with this dog, as it's running around, not just in a single frozen frame, but as it moves through the world and as it does the things that it does. And then you want to convey, how does it, like its fur, how does its fur feel rather. How does it have a lot of is its mouth wet? I don't know, just various things about this dog. And so whereas a photograph just captures a single instant in time, we are capturing the whole of this object or animal or whatever, and we are trying to get that across to the viewer as clearly as possible. And often it's easy to lose a lot of that in the interest of being hyper realistic and super detailed. So these are the major concepts of Drawabox as a whole, and I hope you continue on through the lessons because they are, as far as I'm concerned and in my experience, the very backbone of a strong drawing skill set. So knowing these things will help you move forward. They're not the end all be all, they are the baseline, they are the foundation on which you build up everything else. We don't talk about like figure drawing or anything specific like that. Figure drawing is actually pretty advanced. You need to know how the body simplifies into forms and how they all move through space and all that. And so this stuff gives you the foundation that you need to move on to those other topics.